DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Okay, now we're going to be live. It wasn't, I guess, actually it wasn't a Zoom thing. It was a Wirecast thing because it was like saying, you know, you guys are talking about really boring things, so I'm not going to function. That's what it was saying.
No, because then it would never function.
That's true.
Oh, wait, we're never boring. No, that was.
No, we're always boring. So then it would only function when we're boring. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Okay, let's start. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so it is Monday night, right?
It is. I'm checking. Yes.
My son is just learning the days of the week song, so I should wake him up and go and we do the cute factor for a little bit.
Oh, that would ratings right through the roof. Right through the roof.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it is a Monday night. And of course, that means John and I are here talking to you. And we've got a pretty cool topic tonight. One that I think is gaining a lot of traction. I've been seeing in some of the different Facebook groups and stuff like that, a lot of talk recently about lighting. And more specifically, maybe about some dream lighting or some of the wishes and wants that we would have. And I found it very interesting because I was also having a back and forth with somebody just this afternoon about lights that I have and a particular problem that I have with said lights.
Ooh.
And so I think this will be fun. I'm a little intrigued to hear your side of it, and as well as the chat room. And guys, definitely as we're talking throughout the night, guys and gals, by all means, please throw something out. If you have a wish or want or a tweak on something, we definitely want to hear about it.
For surely. So you mentioned, of course, that you've seen a lot of things. Let's jump into what kind of things have you been seeing online? Because I've been seeing a few cool new things that people have been talking about, but I'm not sure if we're seeing the same things.
Not so much the same things. We're seeing. I'm seeing two different types of posts that are coming up. Of course, the ones that are always the tried and true, which. I mean, if you've been around on Facebook groups for half a second, you've seen this, which is, I want to get some lights and what do I charge? You know, those types of questions.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have those types of questions tonight, but at least the what do we charge type of thing. But the other one that I'm seeing is if you had fill in the dollar amount here, what would you buy? And I thought that was pretty interesting. One, because it's such a vague question that you can really answer it with anything. And the second part to that though is kind of like, okay, I've got this budget amount, I got this thought, let's just have some fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that really gets to be the fun side of it, is just going, if I had unlimited, you know, they didn't say unlimited money, and it wasn't like some astronomical figure, but it does get us thinking, like, what would we do? What would we do differently? So what are you seeing with that then?
So what I've, just to maybe put this in context, when we first started DJing, it was to try to get as much as flash and as many lights as you could. We really didn't care. You know, most of us had multiple beacons of some sort, you know, the revolving beacon lights. We had strobes and we had this, and we ran these for every event, wedding, high school dance, you know, anniversary, you know, funeral. We ran them all the time because this is just what we did back when we first got the lights. As time progressed, in that late 90s, early 2000s, when Mark Farrell came onto the scene in the DJ world, he came in and said, basically, I can go with my sound, my microphone, and my skill and planning and ability without lighting, and I can charge, boom. And we started to have this kind of a switch where you had some DJs who went and were going without lighting virtually at all, maybe some basic lighting or none at all. And then you had, of course, those who were offering maybe packages or what have you. Lighting wasn't just this one thing that we were adding with our shows anymore. Now it would be it might be maybe we'd add a basic, and then we had this additional. Early on, it really wasn't that, we never thought that way too terribly much, because if we had 50 lights, we were setting up all 50 lights at every show. It's just the way it was. The Vertigo, Adrian mentions the Vertigo. The Vertigo was great. The Vertigo 2 and the Vertigo Pro were incredible. And if you guys have any, these were mushroom head lights that would shoot beams out. The original versions had two 300-watt halogen bulbs in those. And they would swing back and forth, and it would make these beams that went and danced around the room. Well, the Vertigo 2 and the Vertigo Pro were the next generation from American DJ, which you could link together. And what was cool about those is they would do the woo, 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 and it would be sync, and then all of a sudden you'd do the stutter. And it was the coolest effect when you could, back when we could run fog in high schools, a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So, with that, here we are today in 2015, and we are going to be talking about, the modern lights. Well, lighting for our events, how it should, how it could be, how it could, what people are using, and really getting into that. So, online, what I have been seeing, what a couple of things that has stood out that really kind of brought this to us, is that we have LDI coming up here in a few weeks, and LDI is generally the spot where lighting companies bring out their brand new stuff. Used to be everything was NAMM. Then as social media and the internet world came out, products were starting to be dripped around the calendar because they didn't want to be everything all convoluted in January. So you're seeing more. Still lighting, some of it moved from NAMM to LDI here in November, but lighting's kind of stayed in that area. What we're seeing is some new kind of lighting that's coming out. One cool thing that you're going to see, and we've been seeing LED screens, they've been coming from everybody, is that there's a company out there that is working on creating an LED screen that's about half price of the cheapest ones that we see right now. Dan, at DJ Expo, the cheapest screens am I wrong thinking that they were on at $2,000 could get you a nice, not a huge one, but I mean a screen for behind you, or am I light on that one?
I was thinking it was higher than that.
It might be okay. So
I was thinking it was closer to 25. Okay,
so let's put her up to 3,000. From my understanding is that there's going to be a 2 by 3, so 6 panel one that's going to be clocking in under $1,000. That should be coming out sometime in the latter part of the year. And what's really cool about it is that it has the tiny little 2.9 millimeter or whatever it is, or it's a 2.9 pixel is what it is. So it's the smaller version. Where they cut corners to get there, I have no idea. But it's supposed to be out there, and it's supposed to, warranty wise and things supposed to be like right up there. So there's some cool things there. Last week, some people were talking about this moving head fixture that's also a fogger built in. So it is the fogger in the middle. It's a moving head fixture, a larger one, similar to the mid and upper size fixtures you'd find from Chauvet Professional or Elation. Not so much the little ones. But companies are incorporating more things into their moving head fixtures with LED rings around them, and then they've got the ability to beam, and then they've got the different things, trying to make it so that they're more versatile in some cases.
That fog though idea, I've seen that before. So a friend of mine shared a picture that he saw a band performing, and when he saw it, he's like, "This is kind of cool," because it was like the idea of kind of this almost 6-8 months ago, maybe, where the idea also of a friend of mine was like, "Oh, it's like the geyser, but now it's thrown into a moving head. Like this is awesome." So it's kind of cool to see that more are potentially coming on board with those combined ideas.
And what's the one with the fogger? Somebody had a version of that at NAMM last year. Is where I think I saw it for the first time. The problem with it is that it only worked part of the time. So that's obviously when you're getting to these new technologies where they're trying to combine different things. There may or may not function in the real world, but it's a cool thing. The promo video that they were pointing to last week really looked cool. But where kind of I wanted to talk about or look at is being somewhat realistic about what type of lights I need as a professional DJ for the types of shows that I do. And the reason I say this and what brought that to me is that I was going through the storeroom on the other side here, that part of the building. I have got more lights that I have purchased for specific events that I needed them for, or a specific season of events that I had forgotten. On one tote, I opened it up. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when I bought these. There's about $2,500 worth of lights in there that I needed for like 3 or 4 events. And then after that, they packed up and they went on the shelf. And I think to myself is, how many times have we as performers who, oh, we need this for this event, have we gone out there and thrown that money out there and then found out later that, you know what, I guess that was more work to set those up than I really wanted it to be. Or it didn't have the effect on my event at the level I was hoping it would. And it's probably money kind of thrown away.
Yeah, way too often. I mean, just from the standpoint of, now I would say on the flip side, I'm very hesitant to say, okay, I've got an event coming up and I'm going to do it for this event. But I get the idea of something I see and I'm like, oh, I could use it for this event. And so now it's the idea, I'm going to go buy it, and then it may happen for that event, it may not. And that's what's gotten me into more trouble than anything else.
Yeah. And some in the chat room are mentioning that too, that it's not unusual, unfortunately. But on the flip side is that, we really like to be able to do cool things.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, when we can go and take that room and make that whole room glow a specific color. I mean, there was one event where it was in a round kind of barn-shaped building, and the bride said, oh, you know how cool it would be if this whole thing would glow red? Challenge accepted. And this was back when we were using incandescent lights, so we had to do cans and gels.
Oh.
But I think I had 50 cans around the room to get that red wash all the way around. It was really kind of cool, and it wasn't as difficult besides running cords than a person would think. The biggest difficulty was trying to find enough gels, because I at the time we weren't ordering things online. Online just really wasn't existing. So I had to go down to my local audio shop, cleaned him out of red gels. Okay, now I don't have enough. Well, if I take and I get to the edge of the gel sheet, and there's this little chunk here, and then there's a little chunk from that one. If I put them together and Scotch tape really carefully down the middle, I will have a gel that God, what a mess that, what a putz. So yeah, it's a cool thing, and we really like to have our fun and our toys, but that becomes a big question early on, I think, is that, can we make money with them? Can they pay for themselves? And is it going to be something that I'm going to use more than these 5 times, and then it sits on my shelf? Of course, I could sell the things, but as soon as you say, oh, I'm going to sell these used lights, it's like, okay, they were $100 lights, and here's $5 for all of them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And that's kind of the situation I'm in. I have a set of lights that I actually want to, I just want to unload. They take, it's my moving heads, and it's nothing against them. They're great lights. I don't take them out often. And some of that's personal, and some of that's just kind of where I'm at. It's not as customary. I know some guys are in markets where it's like moving heads go to every event. Not so much the case around me, and it's been fine. And to be honest with you, it's a lot of work to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
And so when I don't have it, I'm like, they're just taking up space. Maybe it's time to get rid of them. And it's like, man, I spent all this money for them, and it'd be really nice to at least get that price for one of them, and let alone have 2 of them, and no bites. And it's like,
so we get rid of our moving heads. We go down to some basic flood wash lighting on our dance floor. How does that change the success of our dance floor? Does it change it?
Depends. I think it really depends. Are you a programmer, or are you
yes, Ben, still go ahead.
Sound active. I mean, because really, if and that, I think that in lies the key, because if you have a good, well done, programmed light show, it can really add to what's happening. And if you have the right, if you are really a lighting designer, I think it makes a huge impact.
I would agree.
I think it definitely, there's a difference between having them and not having them. I think for the average person, myself included, I had some basic scenes that were created, and so it wasn't sound active, but it wasn't what it could have been. To me, it hasn't really made that much of a difference taking that away. Because what I think made the impact for me, and what ends up taking away, is when I don't have the moving heads, I don't have the truss towers, don't have them uplit. I don't have, in that aspect, I'm probably not having the TV screens because I'm not having the truss towers. So there's a lot of the extra things that go into that are now being taken away. And I think from the overall look, there's a big difference. But from how it impacts, how the responses are, basic wash lighting has been huge for me. One, from ease of setup to the look. The photographers love it. They don't have to compete against the dots. They don't have to compete against the lasers that some guys decide to inadvertently point at a white dress during the first dance. It's like things that they could take away. It's my preference to just do a wash. I've got a couple of just the forehead wash lights, and that's what I use.
Yeah, and
every wedding.
And they do a nice job, and I've had the same situation where you've got photographers who are like, oh, we don't have the spinning beam lights all over the room, and putting those dots in spots that the photographer can't airbrush out because there's not quite enough light, but yet that's one really hot bright spot. So that's as we're looking at the light shows and such, I'm seeing more of the importance of simple, and I think somebody mentioned this up above, and I don't remember who did here, and I think David mentioned something about this, but having that simple light system that is out there and giving him that wash feel, or that wash, that will basically do the job and not be blinding people and not cause issues with your fellow wedding vendors. I think that's sometimes I feel we almost program or do the light show for other DJs. My ET or my ELX 200s, I've been using those consistently at events recently to test them out, because I've got the EKX, I've got the ETX, and it's like, you know what? Everyone asks, can the ELX 200s do weddings? Can they do school dances? Well, the only way I can tell you this is if I do it. Now, if I went and said, oh my gosh, I'm using these ELXs, and everyone, you guys, they're great speakers, they are for the people who've heard them. They think they sounded fine. For DJs, they'd be like, oh, those aren't the top end of the top end speakers. How many times am I making my decision on sound or making my decision on lighting based on what other DJs are going to say about me? And I think that really, unfortunately, in this world, plays into our decisions probably more than it should.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, there's always going to be the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. You've got this impression that I've got to do this because they did it, or because so-and-so had it on Facebook, and so I've got to be able to match what they have. And there is something to that necessarily. And I don't think it's from a standpoint of, I mean, sometimes we just want to impress and we want to feel well liked or whatever. And we're in our circles.
We want to be in the in crowd.
Yeah.
We have
there's also the standpoint. I don't necessarily want to impress the other DJs, and I know with what I have, I'm not going to. I don't have the time and energy to put into my light show to impress the other DJs.
Right.
But who I do, for lack of better terms, want to impress, that is going to know the difference, or at least be able to recognize the difference, is going to be the photographers, is going to be the videographers, is going to be the people that are going to be there. They're going to see it. They're going to witness it. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be happy with me or hating me because of what I did.
Yep.
Because that's where my referrals are going to come from a look standpoint. I really think that most couples, and as we're talking weddings, we'll kind of go that route for a while. Most couples are going to give recommendations based upon performance, based upon music, maybe sound, and then your decor lighting because of how it makes it look. But your dance floor lighting, I think, is one that's going to be more from your videographers and photographers, because those are the shots that they're wanting to use, wanting to blend in, wanting to maybe even overcome, depending upon what's happening at that moment.
Mm-hmm. David mentions this, just to get a couple of the chat room things. David mentions, of course, the whole the guest complaining about the lights being in their eyes. And we've talked about this in other shows. If you put yourself in the perspective of a guest sitting in their chairs on the other side of the dance floor, where it's DJ, dance floor, guests sitting, and your lights are right here shining across, those lights are shining through your dancers right into the eyes of your guests. And if you have older guests, that's a bad combination, because then they can't see what's going on. All they're seeing is shadows, if even that. And dimmers are our friend. Light placement, in this case, David was mentioning, suggesting bouncing them out, refracting the lights off the ceiling. And I've done that at numerous events, and that's a great way to handle that situation with and Brian Red's talked about that and shown examples with the lights in your eyes and how that can be a bad thing.
I thought it was funny. I, for the longest time, never thought about it, never ran into it, never even considered it. Not that I was necessarily hitting, because I was more aiming at the floor than I was straight out.
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody said about bouncing off the ceiling, I'm like, that's an awesome idea, because now it's not a hot spot on them. So if somebody takes a photo with their iPhone, it's not like they're,
right,
Blue Man Group. But in the same respect, it was kind of like, I hadn't thought about bouncing it off the ceiling. Now, the thing that I run into and I struggle with sometimes is when I do have an event or a place where the ceiling is so high that when I refract, it's like there's nothing there.
No effect. Yeah, no effect whatsoever.
Yeah, you want that gentle wash without, and then it becomes, okay, now I've got to get a higher stand, and now I've got to go more straight down, as opposed, I almost have to create my own ceiling with my light.
And that, I was actually thinking about that. Photographers, they would be, have the umbrella and do a bounce out of an umbrella to go and get that fill. We can't quite do that kind of stuff as DJs. That would be cool.
Well, we can. I think we just invented the way that we're going to make ourselves rich.
Is to create the lighting umbrella that bounces the light onto the dance floor. Those actually, if you guys have, I'm sure a lot of you have seen them. They work incredibly well, because they can bounce that light in a wider angle than anything we can do with a traditional light, and it gives you an even light across the board, which is really kind of cool. Excuse me there.
Yeah, hard to bounce off the ceiling at an outdoor wedding.
Yeah.
David spot on with that one, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. So getting back to some of the, we're talking floodlights and wash lights. One of my peeves with those, and this kind of goes back into what we've been seeing also, people talking about placement of DJs with floor plans. Brian has just done a video, he did a video on that where he was talking about, the dance floor's here, the guests are all there, and then I'm way over there type of thing. Those type of situations. And I've been really wondering, it's like, okay, so is there a light situation that will work for almost every event? Because I had one of my tent weddings where I was in the corner, the dance floor was way in the middle of the tent, and I'm not even close to it. The next one, that I'm here, the dance floor is to my immediate left, but there's only 2 feet between the wall and the dance floor, the edge of the tent and the dance floor. So it was basically my table, speaker, lighting, speaker, and everything was down the line. My lights worked fine for that event, although they were almost too close to the guests, even though they were LED and even though they were dimmed down. It's like they were so, because they didn't have enough distance to start to fan out. It was shooting beams at them, dim beams. It wasn't in their eyes or bothering them, but it was the best way to do it in that case was refracting off the ceiling. But I'm wondering, if a person were going to get into lights, which ones would be the most universal to a point at this point in the game for the types of events we do?
I'm not sure if I follow. You mean like as far as
the most useful, as far as are the flood trees that you're referring to, are they the most versatile light that a person could use, or is going and investing in some uplights, because maybe we find out we can use them as uplights in 9 out of 10 situations where my flooded trees can only be used in 6 out of 10 applications, that type of thing.
Okay. First off, if you're only buying one or the other, my philosophy would be go with the Uplights, and here's the why behind that, if you will. If you invest in a set of good quality Uplights, that's something that can be used, like you said, it can be used in more circumstances, more venues, more places. First off, you can sell it as uplighting, and I know a couple different DJs who that is their lighting. Like they come in and they put a set of uplights near the dance floor, and then you can choose to add on, which would then create the whole room. And so when it comes time for dancing, even if the whole room is just the one by the dance floor is the ones that are acting, reacting as you would your flood. Kind of interesting because in the same respect, when you think about that, now we are definitely reflecting off the ceiling because the uplights are shooting straight up and depending upon their layout. But kind of they are versatile because most of them, at least, especially the battery powered wireless ones, if they have a yoke on them, you can create your own tree. You know, if it's a situation where you're not going to have uplight, you can create the tree. And if you're using the battery powered, you now have battery powered wireless control over this tree. So if you need to put it on that far side of the dance floor next to the tent pole where there's no electricity, because where you were going to put it, like was John's situation where it was just too close right on top of them. Now that placement doesn't really, there's still some factor because you have to worry about, you know, traffic pattern, but it's not as detrimental or problematic as it could be if it's like not going to be good otherwise, because that's where power is. And that's where I got to go because that's where power is.
Yeah, I think the battery, if we'd have had this discussion probably 2 years ago, I would have not talked about uplighting. Yeah, I would have, go get the wash floods and that would be the best option. But I really do have to agree that the with using something that could be versatile like an uplight, I've picked up the Chauvet, their little battery, the single, what were they, the N1s or whatever it was, or I don't remember what they were. They weren't the H, they weren't the hex version. They were the Q ones, whatever.
Okay.
Those little, but they're the Bluetooth ones. And if you guys, somebody asked about the new things from Chauvet or American DJ, you go to their websites and you take a look. Chauvet is an example. It's flipping through right now. They're showing the uplight. They're not showing anything that's beyond those little battery powered lights that would really be DJ specifically for weddings. Yeah, there's the little centerpiece thing. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go and buy something to use. I'm not a decor person. I'm not going to go buy these and then rent them out to my couples. No. Bluetooth lighting is really what Chauvet is putting into it. And then, of course, you can go to the Intimidators that were released last year. That's their main options for lighting. But that ability, though, for those to control the lights, whether DMX or Bluetooth in this case, and to be able to put them wherever you want, like the Freedom Pars you can put them around the room, and American DJ has their version. That's cool to be able to go and start sticking them in places, like we did last Saturday night. I did an event for the church, a family fun type day, and they wanted the entry to the school to be lit up. Well, I took those 8 little lights, and because there's around the windows indoors, there's metal frames, you could go and chink, 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 and it took me, a minute to set these 8 lights up in there, turn it on, set it, turn it on, set it, and then turn on my phone, found 1, 2, 3, set, if it not, yep, there we go, and boom, I'm done. So getting back to, there's some flexibility. I can, do them in a variety of different things. Those lights have actually done 4 shows so far. That particular one, they did one where a school dance where they were uplight in between other lights. They did the tents because those tents, the brackets between the posts and such are metal. So they were there. And I had 4 on this side of the tent, 4 on that side of the tent, and shine them up on the ceiling. So they kind of made that glow as Peter was mentioning, a tent, when you can illuminate that inside of a tent, it looks good on the outside too. And those worked wonderfully for that. So I think for right now, the uplighting and even the magnetic powered uplights, battery powered uplights, I think are really, really something to be aware of and look at, because they do have probably the most flexibility right now of anything. Which kind of kills me because I still love my moving head fixtures. As you were saying, they are cool. but you get that balance of time and if I don't have if I had a Jeremy Breck that could travel with me all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Howie's a lighting programmer. These guys, not that a person doesn't understand DMX. Yes, I can set my lights up and I can go and do that, and I can do. It becomes a timing thing and to a point of return on investment. Yeah, if I would go and set up scenes or have the software like Show Express or a couple of others where it goes to the music, yeah, that would be cool. I asked myself though, would my time of learning and would my time of doing that would it net me another $500 a show? Probably not. Would it net me another $100 a show? Maybe. Or may lead to some more referrals, what have you. But it just doesn't have, the return isn't enticing enough for me to take them all the time or to program and then utilize those in my show. High school dances, unfortunately, I almost feel today like it's a necessary evil to have the bigger light show. And it is because the kids want that type of thing. But my favorite high school dance to do is the blacklight dance, because we just take 24 black lights, stick them around the room up on trees, and turn them on. And then we start the dance out with floods. So the black lights are just kind of in the background and they really don't see. And then all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5, 10 songs in, whenever the kids are all there, then you drop all the floods and then the kids are like, ooh, and then that's the end of that was our light show for the rest of the night.
By the way, one idea that came to mind, and I didn't mention it, we were talking about if you're short on space and that kind of thing. One consideration would be to use a post as opposed to a tripod.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the wide base like you have. Koenig-Meyer, I think, has one, and
yeah, I think I've seen
a couple other different companies. Gator, I think, has one now too, and stuff like that. Obviously, you want to weight it to make it safe, but that post and that base is going to be narrower than and less intrusive than a tripod situation. So if you find yourself running into traffic, it might be worth picking something like that up. I have one that I use for my projector, but there's been a couple times where I'm just like, oh man, I wish I would have brought that along, because I definitely would use that as opposed to the tripod, and the one I have would go a heck of a lot higher than my tripod does. Just again, if you're wanting to get it high and can't refract off the ceiling, there's another option.
Yeah, Jeremy Martirano, he utilizes those types of plates and a single pole for projectors and even some of his intelligent lights that he's putting up around the room. I think the last time I checked, though, those were pushing close to $200 for a good one. Am I?
Probably. I mean, this is not something you're going to want to pick up a dozen of them or something like that. I mean, him using it around the room, that's, his type of light show.
For what he has to do, yeah.
To have one that you use maybe for your projector and one that you have as backup, and it's a good opportunity. You get there and you go, ooh, I'm tighter on space than I realized, or, the plan had me having all this room, and then they decided to move the tables a little bit closer than what they were supposed to. I'm going to go grab my backup, and now that's going to be my tripod for the night. So again, not one of those things I would go out with the express purpose of saying I should have, but one of those that I can make use of as a ace in my back or ace in my sleeve if I need it.
Sure. So as you've been kind of looking at things, and we talked or you mentioned earlier, if you had an unlimited lighting budget, what would be the next visual thing that you would want to invest in to add to your show? I love how
you put the word visual in there, because that was not what would be my next investment. I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% sure, because, it's funny. We talk about the things of what we need, and we talk about the things that we want to have. And yet when we go, oh, you have an unlimited budget, instantly my head goes, I would like to have this moving head or these types of moving heads. And it's funny because I'm talking about unloading, and yet that's what I go to in my head of what I might want to have. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm going to answer it the way I wanted to answer it.
Okay.
So,
fine.
I would first off design a new trussing system for totems. Because to me, that right there is one of my big deterrents for using moving heads is the time and effort it takes to put together trussing. And maybe, you know, maybe somebody like Ben Stowe would come along and say, well, listen, if you really want to put anything on top, you can't have the type you're talking about doing. But what I would love to have would be a set of totems that would go in, and I don't care if they're in box, I don't care if they're whatever, but basically I don't have to sit there with a hammer and a pin and a clip 4 times to make it hook onto that base. I want something where I could, you know, squeeze some handles, have it go on, lock into those holes, and then push down so it holds the lock in place or something like that. So I can do that. And it'd be height adjustable like some of those other ones that we have. The new ones that I've been seeing where they're height adjustable, that's great, but it takes you 5 minutes to be able to screw everything together that you need to do. I don't want to take that time to do this effect. I want to get in, I want to get out. I don't like sitting there with a hammer and nail and everything, or hammer and the pins and everything else. So if I had an unlimited budget, I would first try and redesign a trussing that would be a little bit more quick friendly.
Mm-hmm. And that is a visual thing.
Yeah.
So it fit. You fit well. By the way, for those of you wondering, MJ's Light Show.
No.
That's what he said. He said that.
That's been a little harsh.
He said that. I just wanted to show that I had the official MJ Light Show.
I've seen a picture of the official MJ Light Show.
Yeah, so as have I.
It's from 1985, but I saw the official MJ Light Show.
It's you know, one of these signal lights, you know, with the red, yellow, green. Yeah, it's one of them that, you know, they weren't watching it at the end of the block one night, and a couple of screwdrivers later, yeah, I got a light show. Oh wait, I'm sharing too much of my early light show, aren't I?
Yeah.
So my thought is that if I were going to invest in my next visual, I'd probably the uplighting thing. Going from the little tri, I think those are tri, maybe they're quad. I don't know which ones. They were the cheaper ones that I picked up. I'd probably go with hex, because I find that there's things you can do with UV in a hex fixture that you can't, but it would have to be a hex battery power with magnet, because I'm really liking sticking those things around in different spots. Crazy liking it. Then the next piece would be laser projectors. Projectors that are using a combination of LED and laser that are somewhere in that 5,000 lumen, so they're brighter than, you know, the off-the-shelf ones you can get at Best Buy or Office Depot, what have you. But going with the one that has that 20 to 30,000 hour bulb life, it's going to be able to take a little bit more abuse. And then you can utilize these. And Mike Anderson from I can't think of his Motion Monograms. Is that he? Yeah,
Living Motion Monograms.
Living Motion. You know, they've done a lot of things with projectors using those as light effects, and there's things you can do with those. And these really start to become that a more universal thing. If I need to do a wash on a ceiling, tip it up, I can wash the ceiling. If I want to do it in animation, if I want to do lyrics to a song, that's probably been the biggest thing that I've missed. 2 years ago, I was doing music videos at every event I did, high school or wedding. I think I've only had music videos once this year. And I one of the things, my routines I do is the Don't Stop Believing whenever the words are on a screen. And then I can hype the crowd between, during a little musical interludes between, and it works really, really well. But there's people who don't know the song. So when you have the words on the screen and they can see the words, and then they just engage more. And I miss that. So having a projector that could give me a wash of color, who could set, you know, we're playing a New York for a wedding, and all of a sudden the skyline of New York is up across the top of the tent or whatever. You know, just utilizing that in the show and making this show more encompassing, I think is probably the word I want to use. Because then I could take songs and add a video element, a visual video element to those, so that if they're, you know, if there's a slow song and I could have, you know, a star field above them, you know, that's being done by these, whatever it is, that I can do that. And what I like about that is that I can go and I can figure these things out and set them up in advance. And I'm not here trying to change a light show on the fly. It's already done.
Yeah. It's funny. You talked about the projector, and I remember hearing this 2 years ago, maybe at DJ Times, where somebody was saying, you know, like just buy a couple projectors. Like that was kind of the idea. Rather than spending X amount of dollars on all these other things, buy a couple of projectors so that you can utilize. And I remember seeing, let's see, it was at NAMM one year, the one year I got a chance to go, which was kind of cool, where somebody had a projector on a moving head.
Yes. Yep.
But if I remember correctly, you couldn't send stuff to it. It was like built in.
Yeah, it was on
like
some thumb card or the yeah.
Yeah, it was very limited what you could do. It's not like you could feed, you know, the whole night's show or something like that. Didn't have that option. But yeah, that would be definitely pretty cool, just having that ability to kind of change. I mean, we talk about, I think earlier in the chat, somebody had mentioned about how do you create like this look on the ceiling. That would be the easy projector, and now you have whatever scene you're looking for up there.
Just to give you an example, with here's a laser projector from Panasonic, 10,000 lumen. Obviously, this is way beyond what we as DJs, but just to give an idea, those are out there, and this particular one is running at about $13,700. So they do exist. It's just that the technology is so new that to find one, you know, well, here's an Epson one that's not as bright, but it's so that technology will be there eventually, and once it's down to a decent price, and this one's a little bit better. Epson one has one, so who knows? Maybe I'll be buying projectors for prom 2020.
For that one dance.
Yeah.
And then more stuff on the shelf.
Yeah. Just go ahead and say it. You know, just rub that salt in the wound there a little bit.
David made a comment here in the chat room, and his comment was basically, you know, you don't need crazy expensive projector to do some great motion monograms or wall wash patterns. And,
for sure.
And I would agree more with the wall wash than I would with the motion monogram or just the monogram in general. Not saying you have to spend crazy expensive, but I found just recently I've been shooting from across a room. Like I could not get a good spot to set up my projector that wasn't going to be in somebody's way other than shooting from the other side of the room. And I have a 5,000 lumen projector, and I couldn't imagine how late in the night it would have been for that to finally show up if I had used a 3,000.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then maybe it's also the rooms that I'm playing in. I'm playing in rooms that have a lot of windows, or in this particular one, it was an outdoor pavilion that had the walls dropped. So it wasn't bright, but it wasn't dark.
It wasn't dark by any means.
So, I mean, and like I said, it was middle of the day, and I could at least see it. Now, granted, when it got dark, it really popped. But yeah, just, I know there's a lot of people who do it and have great luck with it, but when it came to me, I found that I was glad I waited, because if I had bought the other one, I think I would have made a promise to a couple that I would not have been able to deliver, just because the room would have fought against me.
Sure. And that's never fun when you've got this great plan, especially when you sell that great plan to a couple and it's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be so cool. We're gonna be able to do this, and the room is gonna look incredible. And you get there and it's like, oh wait, I don't remember seeing all those windows up there in the pictures. Do you have shades over those windows? No, I'm sorry, sir, they don't have shades. So you're saying our wedding at 6:00 when we sit down for dinner is going to have the summer sun beating through those windows? Yeah, it's really bright in here.
Okay. This is one of the things we love about our venue.
Yeah, it's everyone loves how much natural light comes in. Yeah, and the bride just paid me $1,000 to make this natural light room look red. So just popping over to ADJ's website, because again, someone had mentioned that. You go and you kind of scroll through what ADJ is featuring in their lighting, and it's some wash lights, fog. There isn't anything out there. Probably the coolest thing is one of their wash fixtures that'll kind of do a zoom and, you know, more of a wash and then a beam. But there's really nothing out there that's just like this light that would be like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect light situation. Hence why when people are recommending things, there's been 20 different lights recommended in the chats between Facebook and YouTube and such. It's just there's not any one thing that people just all agree on. And it's not because of the diversity of the people to a point. It's just that there's nothing out there that's like, wow, this is the perfect fixture.
And I think that's some of what has been, I don't want to say is a disappointment, but I think that's been one of the negatives that a lot of people have had about the trade shows lately is it's the same old. It's almost like lighting. I don't want to say lighting has stopped progressing, but it's been what has been advancing on it has not been stuff that necessarily shows the way we might see with some of the combined effects.
Good trade. Yeah.
Like when you have a fixture that's a couple combined effects, it's like, oh, okay, that's different. That's unusual. That's cool. And what we're seeing is like what you mentioned with the Chevet. They add a magnet to it. They create a light that can now go some different places. The centerpiece light that they showed at Expo, where again, if you're a decor company, awesome idea. If you're not, Jeremy Breck had some cool ideas of way to use it. Don't get me wrong. But utilizing it because it's a placement more than it is something that is going to wow in another way. So I could definitely see why we're like, what would be the next cool thing? And it's like, nobody's really coming out with anything unless they take this idea and they go, poof, here's together. And
somebody's mentioned, a couple of people mentioned the Uplights with Owen and his crew. I mean, there's some neat things. Don't get me wrong. Like Owen, like some of the Uplights, but there's some of them as you look at it, and it's like, that's just the coin light as an example. Neat little light, but functionally, I think there's better options out there. And yes, I know it's not that expensive and whatever, but I've got to have. I don't have the battery pack here, but I've got to have the battery pack with the little USB charger to utilize this. And yeah, it's still fairly compact, but it's just that there's some ideas out there, but they're just not, and not just Ape Labs lights. There's neat ideas, but they're just not a complete product yet. I think is probably the biggest way to describe it. It's like it's close, but it could just a little bit more. And Brian Red has complained about that many a times in that it's like you can tell that they're not designed by people who are out in the field sometimes utilizing the lights, because if you wouldn't do this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes that's it. And Buttery there mentions that coin lights are boring. No, they're not boring, but there's a specific, and Howie's mentioned this, there's a specific spot for them. They're not for every application. The Chauvet little lights that I was using, there's more applications for those, because I can take them out of the duffel bag and walk away, and I don't have to go and get all the little power packs and get those, and I didn't have to charge the power packs in the other part of the house. Yeah, I've got the little ones charging on the charger back here. I put them on this morning. After that, then they go in a duffel bag, and then they're off to the next show next weekend. So,
but again, it's about what's the uniqueness about both of them. It's placement.
Yeah,
it's it's where they can go. I will say the charging factor, because one of my issues that I'm having right now, and for those of you that have kind of seen me on a couple of the different Facebook groups, my issue has become a battery issue of some of my uplights. And without going into a ton of detail, you give me a light that has either a replaceable battery or rechargeable. I mean, Chauvet had those come out I think last year, where they have you have a battery that just inserts in the bottom. It makes it kind of nice, because now the light's not dead if the battery dies, or the light's not having to be plugged in. I can replace something relatively easy. Again, one of the features that makes that good and makes that useful, you add in different placement, and again, there's some of the innovation that we're potentially seeing here.
Yeah, and I think there will be more. We'll see. We'll hear about some in about a month here, the end of the month, when we get to LDI, and when there'll be a little bit more. But it's just, you got to figure out what you need for the types of jobs you do. And this is, Jimmy loves his lights. Jimmy, our graphics guy, he loves lights. He loves the active lights. And such, and as he's talking about his lights and what he wants to do, and I'm thinking to myself, that just sounds like a lot of work and not a lot of return.
Well, and I was talking with Howie one night, and you know, I forget how we even got talking on it. But he was like, oh yeah, you know, he's like, I like to be able to be out in half an hour, 40 minutes or something like that is what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him what I got out the other night when I had my light show and I had my Uplights. It was 20 minutes in the car and I was on the road, and he even made the wow face and the icon.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I don't want to take a ton of time. I want to look good. So if it's gonna be impressive and it's gonna take more time to set up, that's the trade I've got to find.
Sure.
But yeah, I ease of setup. That's another huge one for me.
Yeah.
When we're looking at any type of lighting.
That it is. Well, we should wrap things up here. We are past our time.
Wow, I went fast tonight.
Yeah. Well,
on that note, I guess we're just gonna. That's it. We're just gonna.
That's because I showed everybody MJ's Light Show.
Yeah, that's why it just went so fast. We were so enamored
by the Light Show. Yes, I understand.
I think I have another one. Oh wait, no, I got. Here's the one for when he's in the small room.
Oh yeah, that was his really mobile light show.
Yeah, he upgraded, I think, to the one you got.
Yeah, this is for the gymnasiums and such.
Yeah.
Oh, we got this figured out.
We love you, MJ. So on that note, though, thank you very much for taking some time to join us tonight, whether it was something you read in the chat, whether it was something that you heard with John and I. Either way, I hope you're able to have a little takeaway and just kind of enjoy the thought of thinking of something that maybe you'll be the next $1 million idea. If anybody takes my trust idea and runs with it, if you make $1 million off of it, I'm just asking that you send me a couple, for free, because this was my idea. But besides that, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been wonderful having you. Great shows all this week. John, is there any particular ones that you want to pinpoint?
Well, tomorrow night, Brian's going to be he's going to be doing his show. There's a Ron Ruth is interviewing an author tomorrow night. And it's actually a really kind of a neat thing where he's talking about working with prickly people. He's called the porcupine principle. It's a neat interview he's going to be doing. I can't remember the gentleman's name right off the top of my head. I was studying all of his notes earlier today. Brian will be up, and he's going to be doing a live chat tomorrow night. So if you guys want to, Brian's going to do the first part, and then you guys can jump in, I believe, with the latter part. And then we're pretty much going to be shutting down because we've got getting ready for next week. We're going to be coming to you live from the DJ meetup in Allentown. So we'll be doing there'll be a couple of shows that are going to hit next week, but most of our week will be coming from Allentown live on Monday and Tuesday and seeing how things pan out.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll get back into our full schedule just that first week of November when we get, actually it'd be the second week of November, I suppose. First week it will be in Allentown. So good.
So the thing that we didn't talk about, and you know what, we really should have just nixed tonight's show, got Shaney in here, because I'm sure isn't this Friday when like all the Christmas album comes out?
Oh shoot, that was last week.
Was it? It's the last. Oh yeah, because it would be the 1st of November on Friday.
Oh, how can we Christmas shop without Shaney telling us
all the music
what was out? We've so let you people down. I'm so sorry.
Wow.
Maybe we can see. I don't know. She's been doing a Monday night show. We'll have to see. We'll have to have her come in and do this Christmas special. That'd be special. We'll see what we can do.
I like what you think. All right. Anyway, thank you very much. Of course, make sure you're staying up, and if you're not following and all this stuff, you need to do so, because great content, great stuff is going to be happening next week with the mobile meetup, and John's got a lot of great stuff talking about that's going to be coming up like as it happens. So you want to make sure you're in on that. But thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to shut up now. You guys have a great night.
Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.